My name is Dr. De Sa Pereira. I'm currently a clinical psychologist for the VA. And previously I was also a Marine, but Marine Corps was not enough for me. So infantry was not enough for me, so recon was not enough for me. Anti-terrorism units were not enough for me, so I went all the way to the top of the spear in special operations. So what I'd like to talk today about is this thing that I call warrior withdrawal. I also call it baseline adjustment due to military functioning, or BAMF. Now, I call it baseline adjustment due to military functioning because I can't go to the VA and say badass motherfucker. But even the title of BAMF is part of the treatment process. So in the standard military way, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell it to you, and then I'll tell you what I told you. So if you take away nothing else from today, please take away this. Veterans are not broken. We do not need to be fixed. There are some of us that require retraining. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to go over some of the current diagnoses, then I'll talk about warrior withdrawal, and then sort of a little bit about what's next. As Kate said, I started to think about this as I was transitioning out of the service on my own and trying to understand what was happening to me and what was happening to my peers. We had a sergeant major talk to us about PTSD, his own issues, and I thought maybe that's what I got. And I went to talk to my operational psychologist, and I told him what was going on in my head, and he said, no, you're fine. You're just doing a full mission profile in your head. So I investigated post-traumatic stress. It has 5 critical criteria. The first is a trauma. The second is this idea of re-experiencing, so that's kind of your flashbacks, your nightmares. The third is avoidance, so trying to not remember those things that cause you to think about the traumatic event. The fourth is to have negative thoughts about yourself, negative moods. This is sort of like, it should have been me, or there's nothing that I could do, or I could have done something else. And then the last is hyperarousal. So oftentimes we call this hypervigilance. When I thought about what I was going through, this didn't seem to fit. I didn't avoid. I approached. I went to OIF 1 and it wasn't enough. So I raised my hand and went back for OIF 2. I went to OIF 2 and that wasn't enough. So I went to OIF 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And still that was not enough. So I deployed again in 2009. Still not enough. Not enough. So I went out for special operations and then spent 3 years with them. The other issue is that in the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, PTSD is written up to categorize sort of the general population. As such, it's really written around a singular trauma, or what we call an index trauma. And so our evidence-based practices are designed to help you process that index trauma. Now, I don't know the highways here in Austin, so I'm just going to say Highway 10 because I think it's close. But if you have a horrific car accident on the highway, and now I don't want to get into my car, that's the avoidance. If I'm having flashbacks of the accident, or if I'm having nightmares of the accident, that's the re-experiencing. If I think I should have avoided that because a little kid got hurt, or somebody else should have done something, or I'm a terrible driver, those are the negative cognitions. And so ultimately then we're hyper aware about all the vehicles in our area. And so our evidence-based practices, the things that we do are designed to help you process that. Prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, narrative therapy. We get you to stand next to the car, touch the car's handle, sit in the passenger seat, sit in the driver's seat, turn the car on, back out of the driveway, drive around the neighborhood, and then finally, you're going 90 miles an hour down the highway again. But my problem, and those of the operators that I worked with, was I couldn't pinpoint one trauma. I had over 3 years of my life in combat. I couldn't pick one. I couldn't pick one IED. I couldn't pick one artillery strike. I couldn't pick one RPG strike. I couldn't pick anything. How am I going to reprocess through eye movement desensitization if I can't pick one? Further, when I started to work at the VA, I saw the symptoms similar to mine among veterans who had never deployed to combat. So my hypothesis had been that my problems, or the things that I was suffering, were only for operators, heavily influenced by this book called Operator Syndrome by Dr. Freud. And then I find that people who never went to combat have the same symptoms. People who never deployed have the same symptoms. Even soldiers who didn't even complete their first enlistment have the same symptoms. So I had to rethink this idea of, does there even need to be a traumatic event? So the other diagnosis that we'll sometimes use is this thing called adjustment disorder, and it's very vague. There's behavioral symptoms, there's emotional symptoms, sometimes there's even physical symptoms. The challenge with this one is the timeline. Because according to our DSM again, our big book of boo-boos, you have about 6 months to get over it. So you get out of the military, and if a year later you're still missing your time in service, sorry, that's not adjustment disorder. Now you're just flat depressed or something else. Of course, we wallpaper over this at the VA by creating this thing called chronic adjustment disorder, which is a little bit of an oxymoron, like you're never able to adjust. So I rewound back to a conversation I had with a Green Beret in our team room about how both of us felt this strong need to deploy. It had to be me. I had to go. And when I didn't go, somebody else, of course, went, but I had to go. And the closest thing that I could think of was, this is an addiction. What am I addicted to? Is it honor? Is it courage? Is it commitment for my Marine brethren and sisters? Is it patriotism? Is it valor? Is it tiny little ribbons, as Napoleon said? But when I revisited this from the addiction model, it started to explain things. So here are the symptoms that I include in the warrior withdrawal syndrome. And I use withdrawal deliberately because it addresses the addiction component. What is withdrawal? Withdrawal is when you have a whole bunch of symptoms that happen to you when the substance is taken away. And then when you get a little bit of that substance back, hair of the dog, those symptoms go away. And this was absolutely true when I got off the plane on my first contract. My anger went away. My sense of self was reinstituted because I was back with my brothers. I had purpose. I had identity. I was an operator again, or I was training operators. Communication issues were gone, and I was no longer trying to fast forward through time. The other thing the addiction model helps us explain is that timeline issue with the adjustment disorder. Because if you are an addict for life. And so sometimes I'll joke and say that I'm a recovering warrior. And how strong is that affinity? About 2 weeks ago, I was at a military entrance processing station getting poked and prodded to go back into the Army. This time not as a shooter, this time as a doctor. So what about the trauma, that index trauma that's missing? In working at the VA with these veterans who didn't even deploy, some who didn't even finish the Advanced Individual Training, AIT, I realized that basic training, entry-level training, or boot camp is sufficient to indoctrinate you into a culture of being a warrior. As a young Marine said, and I put it into my book, PTSD is the thing that you have to get to survive in Afghanistan. So our world-class behavioral conditioning program known as entry-level training, which has remained the same for generally thousands of years, where we shave your head, we take away your name, and we make you a last four in an MOS, teaches you to not process trauma, removes your ability to have thoughts that you're an individual, makes you think that you're a bullet sponge. That's your job. We give you hyper arousal instead of hypervigilance, we just call it situational awareness. And if you're situationally aware, not only will that save your life, but we'll give you an award for it. And you'll save your buddies for it. So we program into you these negative cognitions. We program into you these negative moods. We program into you that the only emotion that you can experience or you're allowed to express is anger. So we inculcate into you in that entry-level training what some would call PTSD. So what does that mean moving forward? Well, off the substance abuse model is how I treat, and so I use more motivational interviewing. I try to take those individuals who are pre-contemplative, so these are the veterans who don't think that they have a problem, and bring them into the contemplative stage, where they think, maybe I have a problem, maybe there's something that I could do to be a better spouse, better civilian, better coworker, but I'm not gonna get to it yet. And then move those individuals from the contemplative into the action phase. Let's get you in front of a mental health professional. Let's come up with individual goals for how does your life look now that you're out of the service. The other thing that I do is this, outreach. Because as has been said before, although it's not as bad as it was back in the 60s and 70s, nobody's spitting on veterans and calling them baby killers. Our community does not help our veterans. They call them monsters. You are unstable. You are broken. You need to be fixed. Sometimes that comes from within the house, where your own family leaves you alone because they're afraid of you. So once again, that's not the case. That's not how we treat addicts. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. You are not a monster. You were trained. You were trained to do a specific job, and you did it well. And now all you need is new training. Thank you for your time. I'll answer any questions.